Hello, and welcome to the Heritage Foundation's North Korea Freedom Week panel, Opening Minds in North Korea. I'm Olivia Eno, Senior Policy Analyst in the Asian Studies Center at the Heritage Foundation, and I'm co-hosting this panel today with my esteemed colleague, Senior Research Fellow for Northeast Asia, Bruce Klingner. We're truly delighted to participate in North Korea Freedom Week once again and are eternally grateful to both Suzanne and Jason for coordinating an impactful week of events. When Suzanne first approached us about hosting a panel, Bruce and I were delighted to participate and especially intrigued by the concept of opening minds in North Korea. Promoting openness in North Korea has been an important subject to both of us because we understand the intrinsic power of having information. Ever since I first became interested in the plight of the North Korean people, all the way back in college, I remember hearing stories of North Korean refugees who defected because they heard about the outside world through the radio, or because they gained access to a Bible and found their Christian faith, or because they watched a South Korean drama or an American movie that then prompted them to flee and to leave the country. These stories are really inspiring and in many cases seemingly impossible in a regime that is so closed off to the rest of the world. That North Koreans gain access to information at all is a testament to their ingenuity and persistence. It's a testament to their development of the market economy, and it speaks to their desire to seek out and find out more about the outside world, the world that exists beyond the 38th parallel. It's also a testament to the dedication of South Korean NGOs, missionaries, and persistent information access warriors around the globe who do what they can to bring information to the people of North Korea. These days, it requires actual bravery to promote information access in North Korea because the South Korean government has done so much to curtail that access and to limit freedom of speech and of expression of its own South Korean citizens, particularly through its anti-leaflet law. That law has a restrictive scope that is far more expansive than merely restricting the distribution of leaflets. It limits what can be sent into North Korea by broadly defining leaflets as advertisements, so-called propaganda, auxiliary memory devices like USBs, and even money. In addition, it prohibits the posting of visual aids such as posters along the border area and makes it illegal to broadcast loudspeaker messages along the demarcation line. The punishment, in fact, for violating this law is up to 3 years in prison and approximately 30,000 US dollars in fines. Actually, the second panelists who were supposed to join my colleague Bruce Klingner's panel, Park Sung-huk and Park Jung-ho, have disappeared right before the panel, and we're not actually sure why, but they were slated to host balloon launches along the border just this week. We expect these types of restrictions to come from the Kim regime, but we don't, nor should we have to expect them from a democratically elected administration in South Korea. Our hope through these panels today is to first let North Koreans, in their own words, explain how vital access to information is for them. For many, it is an actual lifeline. And in the second panel, Bruce will lead a discussion on how we can do more to open minds in North Korea and promote vital access to information. Before I introduce the speakers, I wanted to cover a few brief housekeeping items, including that we'll be taking Q&A, and you can submit that through a particular link that's already been distributed to attendees, and also a reminder that panelists can listen in either Korean or English, so please be sure to choose the option that works best for you. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our fabulous speakers for our first panels, which will focus on what opened their minds in North Korea. Our first speaker is going to be Tae Jung-ho. Prior to his defection, he worked at a foreign currency earning company in Haesan in Ryanggang province as vice director, and he served as a warehouse manager at Kim Il-sung Military University. He defected to South Korea in 2016. Our second speaker will be Tae Keum-nam, who served in the North Korean military with the 108th Division as a tank driver from 1985 to 1999. After serving in the military, he worked as an airplane manufacturer, and he defected with his family to South Korea back in 2013. Today, he actually runs his own business inside of South Korea. Finally, we have our third speaker, Kim Ji-young. Kim was born in Haesan as well. She studied at Kim Il-sung University and later founded a successful restaurant inside of North Korea. When her family fell out of favor with the regime, they made the decision to defect also in 2013. During her time in North Korea, she was not aware of the hardships all around the country, but she was determined to help after she learned more once she had defected, and that's why she works for Free North Korea Radio today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our first speaker to give brief remarks. So I'll now invite Tae Jung-ho to give us first comments.
안녕하십니까?
Hello, everybody. I defected and I entered South Korea on November 23rd. My name is Jung-ho Choi. And the motivation, the reason I ended up coming to the South Korea when I lived in North Korea. And then my family members actually left North Korea and I was living there alone and I was very lonely. And I had this friend, one of my friend. And then I know that you're lonely. Let's have a drink and then let's go somewhere. So I followed my friend. So we were sharing a drink and then a Korean TV was on, TV drama was on, and then it kind of soothed my mind, and then I felt comfortable. So I ended up seeing, and I think it was a mini series about like 40, 50 episodes, but I belonged to Communist Party when I was in North Korea, and then I myself actually try not to watch South Korean drama as much, and then I actually made up my mind and uphold my promise to the country and then protect my country. But then my friend actually turned on the TV and then he wanted to console my lonely mind. And then after I saw this drama, I realized that South Korea is not actual South Korea that I heard from North Korea. They said South Korea is corrupted and the people don't have houses. But then from that South Korean drama, The Stairs to the Heaven, that was the title of the drama, and then the apartment that was shown in the drama, and then it was like dramatically different from what I heard or what I actually knew. And then I asked my friend, "Is this real Korea? Is this for real?" And then maybe they wanna, brainwash us, and then maybe they're, making this falsehood. This is far from the reality. And then my friend is like, you just need to watch a little bit, and then you will know. And then it feels like it can show that it's actual reality of what's going on in South Korea, and they're actually living very, very well. So, so I was still confused, and I was not confused. But then I went to the marketplace and I purchased the CD, which has the drama recorded. And then there were so many different movies. But then I rewatched The Stairs to the Heaven, and then other action movies and like other things. Wow! Then like I realized that the South Korea is really different from what I have thought so far. So I was surprised, I was in shock. And then like I realized that like all I knew was a lie. And then like I started doubting North Korea regime and the government. And then the initial promise to the Communist Party and then the military it began to, I mean, the whole thing, once I start doubting, it kind of started shaking all the belief that I had, the promises that I had, because I realized that it was based on falsehood. So I was strengthened, and then I gained a lot of energy by watching Korean dramas and movies. And then, well, when it comes to radio listening, if you listen to Korean radio program, once you get once they found, you get arrested, you could die. But then, like I tried this radio. I started listening to the radio, and at first it was I couldn't find the right channel. There was a noises I couldn't find it, but then there was a song, and then it was I can't think of the title of the song, but it was sung by the famous singer whose name is Sun Hee Lee, a great singer. And then there was a song by Huna Na, and then the songs were so much better too. It was fresher, and then it was my heart was drawn into these songs, and it was different from what I've been listening to, North Korean songs. And so I started listening to the radio on a daily basis. And then there was a song I remember. And then whenever I was lonely, I was feeling sad and lonely. I still And then the lyric goes like that: I came with the dream. I am holding the dream in my heart, and there's nothing you cannot do if you try. And then the good days and the new days will return to you. And that it was just like so fitting to my situation and then to my heart. I was really consoled by the song. And then this is something I learned after I came to South Korea. But then um, North Korea radio programs are so different. They don't really speak of personal dreams or hope or anything like that. It's all about the propaganda. And another thing, and then there was another program. It was and then there's a conversation between a woman and a man, and then they sounded like they're from North Korea because I think they were actually from North Korea, not South Korean people acting as if they were North Korean, but then it sounded real. So I heard that specific program. I think the title was "The People Who Left Their Hometown" or something. And then I listened to that specific program for dozens of times because I wanted to know if this was real or not. And and then well, there was a lot of rumor that like they're gonna lure you by putting a beautiful woman, then you get arrested or something. But and then I kept listening to their own experiences. And then secondly, I realized that what I have heard, what I've learned or knew was all falsehood. And then so I had to listen to that dozens of so many times until I made up my mind so that I want to leave this country for myself so that I can find my own freedom too. But it took so many times of listening to that particular program. And then my family members, my brothers, and then they asked me, "Did you change your mind? Now you have a changed mind." And then I said, "Yes, yes. Now I have changed mind." And he said, "Okay, okay. So I am gonna wait for you since you're ready and you have changed." And so someone came to me. They picked me up. And so with my family, so I crossed the Aplok River, the river of death, a river of of but I went to Thailand first, and then I had stayed there for about a month. Then I entered South Korea about a month later. And then now here, I am living a free, happy life. And then right now I'm thinking about if I had not listened to that radio and then TV program at the time, I mean, could this be possible? Like, could I live like this happily and freely? And and now I'm free. I have nothing to worry about. So now this is the time for me to actually deliver this good news and then deliver these messages to people who live in North Korea so that they learn about this and they can have changed minds as well. And then that's how I involve this movement and then this meaningful cause.
That was really great. Thank you so much. 제 훈남 말 시작할 수 있어요. 감사합니다.
Hello, everyone. In November of 2013, I defected to South Korea. The reason that I defected from North Korea is that in 1970s, it was, my father was a, well-to-do official, high official, but he made some mistake and he was imprisoned and eventually executed. And I was in the military. And even if they, killed my father because of my indoctrination, I just thought that I will be faithful. I'd be loyal to the government. I thought that my father must have made some mistake, and he could not protest or make an excuse or speak for himself. And at that time, when I was released after 15 years of military service, they didn't discharge us. Rather than they sent us to labor force, and I went to work at a, airplane manufacturing plant. And again, I was put into hardship, and it was hard to survive, make a living. And at that time, my older brother was in a security force, and and it's very hard to live there. So why don't you come on out? So I was released from that factory, and and I moved to different cities from Pyongyang, Siniju. We went around and we did a lot of like a merchant, a trade. And during that, my business, now my older brother was in prison because they say it was illegal to have that kind of a free trade. So again, he was tortured and he was executed. And now that father has died and my older brother has died, I lost it. I come to realize that this regime, they persecute the citizens who try to make their life a little bit better. They didn't do anything wrong. So, while I was working with my older brother, and my older brother would share with what his experience was like a security, force. And he told me the bad aspect of a North Korean government and, the advantages of South Korean government. And at that time, I was able to get a radio made by Sharp. And when I turned on the radio, it was a free North Korea radio broadcast system. I heard that sound. I thought it would be a radio broadcast from North Korean government, but it was from something else. And I said, what is this? And I paid attention. Of course, during the day, I could not listen, but at night, our family, my mom, my children, my wife, we were under the blanket. We listened to the radio. And what was most amazing was about the story, testimony of the defectors in South Korea. So looking back, it was a there's a program called 탈북 defector Imanga, and there was a regular panelist. And when I heard that somebody escaped, risking their lives, there is a hope. And I also saw, I don't know who sent it, but I think it was a Park Sang-hak or somebody. I saw a flyer that in Busan, beach, people, enjoying bathing, swimming, and there are tons of cars, tons of taxi. And there was another defector, and this person actually, knifed the Chinese official in the course of escape. He was in prison, but he was released, and then he defected. So having heard that, I thought maybe I can make it. So after my father and my older brother was killed, I thought maybe I should do this. But my mom told me, if you stay here, you're gonna die. You'll be killed. So you should leave. You listen to the radio, and even what you share with your older brother, share with you. I think that will be true. You are a man. You should find out what the outside the world is like. So my mom pushed me to leave. At that time, my mom was 72 years old. And when I leave, who will take care of my mom? So I talked to my younger sibling, and I told them I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna escape. Even in the process of leaving, that even if I die, I will not regret. So in November, my son was 10 years old. 10 years old. That's a elementary school student. What do they know? So we hid in the mountain. We made a cave, and we hid there for about a month. So we practice. We almost practice exercise climbing mountain in that mountain Paektu. There was no guide, so in that Paektu mountain, we practiced about a month how to climbing the mountain so that we can have enough strength to actually be able to escape. So we crossed the Tuman River, and for 4 days we only traveled at night because during the day there are a lot of patrol. So we try to avoid that surveillance. We moved at night. So miles every night, and then I met somebody in China who helped me, and I went to Yeongil. And I heard that if you go to church, somebody will help. I heard that in the radio. If you go to church, a pastor or the evangelist, if you beg them, they will help you. So I went to Chinese church, 5 churches, but they rejected me. I knelt down with my family to those Chinese Christians. So we escaped because there was no way of surviving in North Korea. I looked like my toes were showing in my shoes. My clothes were all worn out. I didn't wash for 2 months. It was so dirty. But in the Chinese churches were organized by Chinese government, so they kicked us out. So I was so angry, but no, there's something wrong. I gotta find another way. So I have to make my own way. So I tried to talk to somebody who was speaking Korean. This person actually sold us to like a pig farm near Siberia, and nobody welcomed us. For a month and a half, I was subject to hard labor. Now we escape again, and we try to look for touch broker. And now I met somebody with the right connection. Now I was able to go to South Korea. Now I live in my own house, drive my own car, have my own business. but I told them defectors not to go to church because I was rejected. Now my son is, I mean, he's studying. He's studying in the business management. Now, me and my wife, we don't have a lot of capital. We are doing small manufacturing plant. You know, among all the defectors in South Korea, no one is involved with any kind of manufacturing business. I'm the only one. Now, I utilize my experience in that airplane manufacturing plant, so I'm doing that manufacturing business. Now, the current South Korean regime has illegalized all different methods, the flyers and the radio, and put a $1 in a pack, the plastic bottle. These are very effective, but somehow this government, this administration, has prevented us, illegalized. This administration is so afraid of North Korean government, and they rather persecute North Korean refugees in South Korea. So, in North Korea, they don't have electricity, they don't have access to radio, but, you know, I left my radio in North Korea. I'm sure my younger brother is listening, waiting for my story from through that radio. And I was able to bring my younger brother and older sister out. There are so many people like me in North Korea, and they are so curious about how people live in outside the world, what kind of environment that is. So sooner we're bringing those truth and information, they can open their doors, their eyes. The economic sanction is not going to work. Harder the sanction is, Kim Jong Un will just tighten more of his control. So with the radio, with the flyer, and the plastic bottle, with all necessary means, we should share the information to people in North Korea. My mom, when my dad was killed, we couldn't even retrieve the body. My in-laws, they are living in a society of slaves. There is no society like this in the world. Please help me. Please help us. I know I spoke a lot, and thank you very much.
That was
Thank you so much.
a reminder, really inspiring to hear your story and that you're continuing to do all of this work, including hopefully to get your brother to freedom as well. We hope that will be the case. Kim Ji-young, we now invite you to speak. 감사합니다.
Hello, everybody. I came to South Korea. Oh, actually, I became South Korean citizen in 2013. I live in South Korea. My name is Ji-young Kim. And in fact, I actually lived as a citizen of Pyongyang until November of 2012. And I crossed the Yalu River and then came to South Korea. And the motivation, how I came to South Korea, what can I say? And then I actually ended up in a position that I have to pledge my loyalty and just dedicate my life to North Korean government. And then I wanted to find a freedom. That's how I wanted to come to the South Korea. But then when I lived in North Korea, I was well educated and I was one of those people who obliged. And then I tried not to do anything that the government told us not to do. But I was kind of people that the North Korean government had to take care of, and then I was under their protection. But then I felt like I was betrayed. I experienced betrayal, but then I gave my loyalty to them. But then once I feel betrayal from them, the shock is even more tremendous. And in fact, when we were educated in North Korea, the US and South Korea, and it's the exact opposite of North Korea. So because I felt so wronged when I lived in North Korea because of betrayal that I felt. I wanted to go to South Korea or the US and then actually speak out and bring out my voice, which is anti-North Korea. But then I was actually waiting for um, South Korea's movies and so-called Korean wave. We were so thirsty. We were waiting for them to be available because 80% of the movies or news program that are available in North Korea, that's really about propaganda, and then that's about the government and their policies. And once we started watching the South Korean dramas and movies, and then that actually, was the beginning point. I became to think that maybe that's some of them are true. And so I started listening to the radio before I actually made up my mind to leave for South Korea. And after I started listening to the radio, it's not just a fiction or anything like that. It was more of an information. And then I was able to listen to radio. It was a stable wave that I could capture between 2 and 3 in the morning. And what I shocked me, it was that um, Freedom of North Korea broadcast program and the KBS News um, and then if you listen to that program, and then there's not many words we can understand and we can really relate to, but then the broadcast title is that the freedom of North Korea. Then, like obviously, naturally, you would think that this might be for us, North Korean people. And then because of the word, one word, North Korea, that captured our attention. Oh, maybe this is for us, and this is a broadcast for us. And then this is a story, North Korean refugees who defected from North Korea and then they safely arrived in South Korea. And it's a story of their happy life in North Korea. And then this is authentic North Korean accent. And then when I listen to that accent and how they speak, my heart palpitated and then my heart was racing as if like they're calling me, um, come here soon. We welcome you. Come here as soon as possible. So then that was my biggest motivation that I wanna work in that broadcast. I wanna do the same thing. I wanna deliver that message. So this is about the Korean wave, of course, but then it's mostly about North Korean refugees, defectors who live in South Korea, who's living a very good, happy life. And this could be very, very powerful messages. And then I think directly and indirectly, by working in this type of delivering message to North Korea, it's going to help our unification. We're working towards the Korea unification indirectly or directly. And then if North Korean people who are still there, but then thinking about leaving the country and defecting, then listening to these type of program, and then internet is available, and then so the preparation for our unification, the other type of preparation outside of North Korea is already happening, but this type of effort and preparation has to be, you know, also with North Korean. And then if you listen to that kind of program and then listen to that information, maybe that's North Korean people's preparation for a unification. And this is what North Korean government fears the most: the informed people who thirst for freedom and who wants to have this change. So I think that. And then because we were separated for 70 years, and then North Korean people, once they listen to the radio programs or TV drama for the first time, it is very possible that they don't know what they were talking about. They don't understand. It's the same language. It's not like different dialect or anything like that. But then they won't be able to understand each other. But that if they keep listening to this, you know, specialized or designed for North Korean people radio program, and then they will start understanding, and then it will be their preparation for their new life in South Korea, possibly. And then we can provide a dream and hope. And then there is a saying that if you want to win a war, you have to know your enemies, right? And um, I think the the people who are North Korean, and then we have to target the educated people, and then and then so we have to. I think it's meaningful that we have to continue, and then we have to do more of this broadcast or program that is about North Korean people. So for this week, this is a very valuable opportunity and a chance that we can amplify our voice, North Korean people, what other people, the oldest stakeholders are doing for us, this movement. I think it's very meaningful, and then a great opportunity that the Susan, Olivia, and they have tremendous interest in North Korea, and then I cannot thank you enough for this opportunity. Thank you again.
Oh, Kim Ji-young, I think this was really great to hear from you, and I especially liked what you said about how the North Korean government, the Kim regime, they fear an informed people, and so that's why it's so important to be able to get information in to North Korea. So thank you for sharing that. We have a number of questions coming in from the audience, and I will go ahead and pose one of them to you now. I'm hoping we can get to two or three of them in this panel. The first question is there anything that we can do as individuals to promote freedom in North Korea? And I think this is open to any of the panelists. I think maybe we have lost Chae Jung-ho, but hopefully he can join us back here. But either Tae Nam or Kim Ji-young, either of you are free to answer that.
What an individual can help, what can they do to help with for North Korean freedom? Because there's no official or legal channel to send information, and because of that, an individual really cannot initiate that kind of information sending to North Korea. But only a certain organization and well-organized effort can do that. There are many channels to help North Koreans, like in North Korea, Suzanne and Olivia. There are people who work for human rights of North Korea and even South Korea. There are many organizations that's working for freedom in North Korea. Now, these organizations need to collaborate and find a creative, innovative way to send information to North Korea. And as Mr. Kumnam Choi said, when he asked for help, even the passerbys, he was ignored, rejected. But I think now there will be more people who are willing to give them help. When I was rejected from churches in China, now I do understand why that happened. At that time, the Chinese churches were good, but because they were under tight surveillance of Chinese government, if they accept defectors, their church will be shut down. So so they had to reject the refugees. Now I understand, but when I now am in South Korea, many churches or Catholics or Buddhist, there's a freedom of religion in South Korea. This is wonderful society. We live in this open freedom society, and we receive care and love from the neighbors. And even people in the United States are helping. But in North Koreans say the United States is their arch enemy. I learned that the government of United States and many countries try to help for freedom in North Korea, and they support. So people in North Korea are not aware of that. Now, with the radio and flyer, I continue to make an effort in this way. There's a Korean proverb. It says that the small, like a small water drop can make a hole in a rock or something like that. It's a small efforts can gather together. Now there are 30,000 defectors. I think it'll increase to 300,000 in some time. My older brother in the security force told me, I saw the secret document, classified document, and that 1,200,000 escaped to North Korea. And there was some sort of data about defectors. So when I came to South Korea, the Kim Yong-han, Park Sang-han, or these people, they sent those information to us through a flyer or balloon or radio. Because if you send it to Ganghwa-do, island of Ganghwa, you can receive the broadcast very clearly, especially at night. It's a clear broadcast. So the defectors' testimony, of their hometown in North Korea, with own North Korean dialect, these stories are so moving. So, we are aware that when you go to China and, it's a lot of, bright electricity, but in North Korea, it's utterly darkness. In North Korea, you are not to listen, you are not to talk, you are not to see. You cannot express. I now know why. But the nature of people, when they are prevented to do something, they rather do more. People in North Korea, they already went through like a hell. They are not afraid. For them to see one or two program of South Korean media, it used to be like I had to watch like a 10 episode to be convinced, but now only one or two episode can convince people and open their eyes. So through CD or USB, North Korean people will become conscientized, and they raised awareness, and they can topple Kim's regime and give freedom to North Korean people, give life, and let them know that outside of North Korea, it's not the same. And people of outside are willing to help them and give them love and care. And I really like to plead to you, please help defectors, and please help North Korean people. Again, as I said, out of 3 male leaders, my father, my older brother was killed. If I stayed there, I would have died. There are no regime like this in the world. In South Korea, they don't execute. There may be, go to a life sentencing, but just because somebody asked for some food, this person was hung to death. How can you say this is a human society? Even now, I'm 50 years old. If I'm given a gun, I will fight for the freedom of North Korea.
Much, Jacob Nam. I think that we ended on such an important note, a call to action for every single person to help the people of North Korea. And I love the way that you put it, that every little bit, every little action adds up into being something really big that can help individuals inside of North Korea. So, Jacob Nam, Kim Ji-young, and I think we also lost Chae Jong-ho. But thank you to all of you for your contributions to this panel. I'm now going to welcome my colleague, Bruce Klingner, to kick off our second panel. And that promises to be a very fascinating panel as well. But thanks to all for joining us.
Thank you very much, Olivia, and thank you to our panelists. It really was quite a moving panel to hear the hardships that they've had to endure in both North and South Korea now. We're all familiar with the nighttime satellite photos of the Korean Peninsula that show the very vivid difference between the dark, the brutal oppression and poverty of North Korea from the brightness of the economic miracle of the Republic of Korea. And those photos show that North Korea is a black hole, a country in which the lights of freedom, the lights of democracy, of human rights, and for far too many, even the light of hope have been extinguished. Through this conference, we hope to bring some light of awareness and knowledge to the very serious issue of North Korean human rights. And more importantly, we hope that the activities that we'll hear about on this second panel will have impact on North Korea. The North Korean escapees have faced authorities that try to prevent the freedom of speech in North Korea. And unfortunately, they are now facing South Korean authorities that seek to do the same. As Olivia mentioned early on in the first panel, when Suzanne Scholte came to us asking if we could host another event, as we have done in the past, we jumped at the chance. We always embrace working with Suzanne and others who advocate on behalf of North Korean escapees. And Suzanne put together a really well-organized themes. On Monday at AEI with Nick Eberstadt and Olivia Schreiber, there was the theme of open hearts, of how people can, the escapees discuss the human rights situation in North Korea. Tonight's theme, as we've heard, is open minds. So we've heard in the first panel how information getting into North Korea did open their minds to what life was like outside of North Korea, which is in vivid contrast to what the regime had been telling them that life was like outside of North Korea. And in the second panel, we'll hear about the efforts that many of these escapees are making to try to open even more minds in North Korea. And then immediately after this event, there's an event with the theme of open borders with Dr. Pavel Klein of the Isabella Foundation that will discuss the current state of the vulnerable population, especially children in North Korea, and how humanitarian assistance can be provided to address the population. So as you've noticed, we've had some technical issues tonight. Please bear with us. We're dealing with 2 different continents, 2 different time zones, 2 different languages. But of far greater concern, we've lost contact with 2 of our panelists, and we're unsure where they are, and we are concerned and hopeful and praying for their safety. So on this first panel, I'm going to first, we've lost 2 of the panelists. As a replacement, first we will hear from Kim Sung-min, who's the founder of Free North Korea Radio. He will discuss the situation with our 2 missing panelists, as well as discuss in greater detail what he has been doing to try to get information into North Korea via radio. The second panelist will be Chae Jong-hoon, who will brief on foreign radio broadcasts into North Korea, as well as K-pop SD cards. And he was a graduate of Kim Il Military School, 144th Division, a political officer. Before his defection, he worked in Gyeongyang Province Construction Company. Then our third panelist will be Jung Soo-yul, who will brief on sending outside information into North Korea via water balloons. And he was in a North Korean metallurgy university professor, the Chongjin Association of Construction Technician, and he escaped from North Korea and moved to South Korea in 2008. And he is the president of the Gura Unification Association. So first, I'm going to ask if Kim Song-min could unmute his microphone and talk to us not only about Free North Korea Radio, but our two panelists.
Hello, I am Seung-min Kim. So I was saying that I was not supposed to speak, and then I am speaking in place of Park Sang-hak, and first of all, the Suzanne Scholte, like I have to say thank you, my sincere gratitude for making this event a reality, and other stakeholders, including Mr. Bruce. Thank you very much. And I have to say, we are suffering. And for example, Mr. Park Sang-hak, and for this week, he wanted to distribute the leaflets, and then he became being under severe surveillance by the Moon Jae-in administration. So they've been watching Mr. Park under mere, name of protecting their safety, but then it's actually surveillance and then suppression of their activities, because they are and then they have declared that they're going to distribute the leaflets and sending information to North Korea. And then ever since they declared that, the activities, the police activities towards them has dramatically changed. And this is literally visible suppression. And then they don't want them to do that. It's very clear. And distributing leaflets to North Korea and then radio broadcasting, they are very important. And then I have to say, this is the symbolization of our aching heart, because we feel sorry. We feel sorry. We feel we were owing them, because we are living here happily in freedom, and then our friends and our relatives, they're not experiencing this at all. They're still in pain and under oppression, and then it makes my heart ache. So it delivers our aching heart and our sympathy, and then our wish that they would come here as well and then live happily just like us. And this is very important. I cannot say this enough. And but ever since the Moon administration, it has changed so much. And then they have this new policy or law, and distributing leaflet is now illegal. And then if you do that, you are going to be punished by the law, and then you'll be jailed. And then the fine would be more than 30,000 US dollars equivalent. And then they're actually denying all the works that has been done by previous administration and North Korean defectors. And then this is anti-history, and this is backward. And we have to realize the severity of this policy and activities of this current administration. And And then later, other people, including Sanghak Park and then Chang Seo and Park Sung-ho, who say later. And then they actually, when they were sending this, the leaflets, um, well, as the previous speakers testified, and they lived in dark, and they lived as if they were in a frog, confined in a well. But then, because of this information, radio and other information, it made them to make their mind, they resoluted, right? And then now we cannot do that anymore. This important activities to help them open their minds and then make resolution to leave the country. And then we cannot do that any longer. And then not too long ago, and with Park Sang-hak and then Jang Se-yu and then other people, and then I was asked to you know help them with the fund aid. And then I was saying that in my current activities, I am struggling myself. And how can I, help you with the funds and aids? But then, like, suddenly I realized that I experienced the very same thing. And then I answered to them, I told them that then, there is going to be the 16th North Korean Freedom Week. And then the members of that North Korean Freedom Committee that we're going to open an event, a bazaar. Then we're gonna gather money, and then we're gonna fundraise, and then we're gonna distribute the proceeds to different the organizations, and then so I thought of that all of a sudden, and then I also received the receipts, and then I was talking to them. Do you want this receipt as well? And in order to, let's talk about the police. And then police is supposed to work for their um the safety and freedom. But then this I don't even know if this is the police that is supposed to be. And the Moon Jae-in administration is just afraid of the Kim Jong-un administration. And I'm just talking about an example and then how um, our organizations who are working for North Koreans' freedom were just suffering, double suffering actually, under Moon Jae-in administration and a lack of aids and funds. And they're trying to pass another article of law that they were trying to prevent broadcast to North Korea as well. And then the Congress is also trying to pass this law for Moon's administration. But then And then once it passes, then a lot of broadcasts, even the broadcast broadcasted from the U.S., from the Asian, because they're using the channel based in South Korea. So once this policy or the law is passed, it's basically going to block all the route for us to deliver our message, the broadcast opportunities. And then I just cannot imagine, because this is this free country, and then there is a checkpoints everywhere, and they're stopping. And I'm asking to you, U.S. citizens, and then all the stakeholders in the U.S. Do you think it makes sense? I don't think so. And then this is unacceptable. And then we're still acting. We're still sending leaflets to North Korea. We did that yesterday. We're doing it today. We're going to do that tomorrow. We're not going to stop. but the leaflets to leaflets and then the broadcast to North Korea. It has been done for many decades by Korean government officially, and then these were the food for their minds, and then for their hope, and I think this is evil policy that they prevent us, and it's going to be judged, and it's going to be punished by the history. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jong-soo Yoo, if you could go ahead and do your presentation, sir. Mr. Jong.
예, 안녕하십니까. 계열통일연대 장.
Okay, this is Seul Chang from Kyoraeol Unification Association. Thank you very much. As Mr. Kim Sung-min shared, Moon administration is suppressing a lot of defector organization that try to bring information to North Korea. We've been affected a lot. They're trying to squeeze the source, and we are being really being exhausted. This is a very interesting phenomena. About 2 weeks ago, my wife and I went to Ganghwa Island, and I have actually small, like a motel business. So I went there and I left to Ganghwa Island. And this is another small island called Songmo Island. And there's a bridge. Once we got onto the bridge, there were a lot of cars, there was a lot of traffic, and we were trying to pass by. But there were soldiers and stopped my car. And my wife and I was startled. What is this? It was not a truck. It was, I was just on a regular sedan. I wasn't driving a truck. So they wanted to search our car. So, but all the other cars in front of me were not searched. But why are you searching my car? I wondered. So I asked them why. This car has been specially registered, and it's not the individual soldier's fault. The government has ordered the soldier to do it. But I was really embarrassed because a lot of people think that, maybe we did some criminal activity, because we are asked to pull over, and a lot of people look us as if we are criminals. And my wife was so upset, and I asked them, why are you searching our car? And that the officer said that this bridge, there's information that a lot of North Korean information activity is being supplied through this bridge. So, and this is a regular sedan, and I wouldn't, don't have any kind of equipment. So, there was no point of getting upset over them, and my heart was heavy. I wanted to letter to my hometown, and this government is preventing us from doing that. Is this admiration truly for the people of North Korea? It's this South Korean government truly want North Korean lives to be improved. I shared this with a friend of mine as well. Recently, the North Korean, because the South Korean government is like a pro-North Korea, there are a lot of intelligence activity has been curtailed. So if even the North Korean people who used to have some sort of information exchange activity, they are reducing their activity. And because more North Koreans have been arrested recently because of their any kind of activity of receiving information, even people in North Korea are being penalized by the activity of South Korean government. Up to now, many water balloon or balloon, we said like this is a head of Kim Jong-un. That was our nickname. So a lot of these balloons have gone to North Korea. The leaflet, the snack Choco Pie, that's a very popular snack, and also other food, and even handwritten letters was sent to North Korea. We did for about 5 years, and then this came to a sudden stop because of Moon administration's, activity. Now we are subject of police surveillance, search, investigation, and our activity has been greatly suppressed. As a defector who came to South Korea, having raised in North Korea, and my heart is heavy. And this is nonsense. This society is really terrible and scary. We cannot even engage in a human rights activity, and any activity for unification is going to get more and more difficult. When I came to South Korea, this is most, I guess, unfair treatment. I feel this is supposed to be a free society, and North Korean people have misunderstanding about South Korea, and they think the South Korean society is their enemy. So this South Korean who gave me a new opportunity. Now, along with my friends and my colleagues, to them, I want to share the truth about South Korea, about democracy, about freedom, and I want to make contribution. So I have taken as my mission to send information, truth to North Korea. Many defectors, they're the trigger. What motivated them to escape and defect to South Korea is precisely these informations, either leaflet or broadcast, especially the voices of defectors and a lot of civic organizations, that try to help the freedom in North Korea. That was the most effective trigger. The hope for North Korean people and our step toward freedom, the Moon administration is quenching their hunger. They are like trampling their hope. North Korean, what is the life that North Korean people want? We have to be very clear about that. I want to send this warning or caution, word of caution. Yesterday, in our home, the officials from South Korean government, the unification department, they visited. I've been having that motel business for about 6 years. They never, visit. They never paid attention. Occasionally, some police or the soldiers occasionally would come and just they would do some search, or they would give us some notice. But suddenly, there's a different level of officials came, and over the phone, they said they wanted to visit this motel since chairperson of this Korea Unification Association is doing. They wanted to check how they are doing. So how we are doing. So I said I politely refused. I told them that this South Korean Unification Department is not only monitoring, surveillancing, and rather suppressing our activity toward North Korea. So I told them that I have nothing to say to that officials. And I had a good chance to meet the person in charge of surveillancing, defector and our organizations. And this North Korean policy of the current administration is really nonsense. Even these officials said they want to support sending information to North Korea, but under current administration, the government officials, their hands are tied because this is a directive from the higher up. So even though they are embarrassed, they would have to make this visit. So any leaflets or water balloon, nicknamed Kim Jong-un's head, they ask us to, stop those activities. So I told them, since we came to South Korea, the sacred thing, the mission, the most important thing for us now is this, to send information to North Korea. This is the most important activity for me, is to liberate my people in North Korea. And I want to, do what I can. Defectors don't have money, we don't have a status, fame, but I had a pride that I'm doing something for freedom of North Korea. But this administration have taken that away. That was my very significant, fulfilling activity in my life, and they took that away to save my family and friends. I wanted to help save people of North Korea from their suffering. Now they really put a nail to the coffin of all this human rights organization of defectors. I hope we need to reconsider what is truly needed for people in North Korea. And for defectors and for many, North activities for North Korea, I want to rededicate our commitment to continue this activity until it's possible for us. Thank you.
That was very important information as well as a very emotional plea of seeking help to further the efforts of improving human rights in North Korea. Now we'll see if Mr. Chae Jung-hoon, if you could go ahead and make your presentation, sir.
Yes, my name is Jung-ho Choi. Yes. So our organization that I involved in is this is a human rights organization for North Korean people, and mostly we are people who served in militaries, and we usually work with video medias and SD cards, like the video materials. But then not just our organization, but many other organizations, the broadcast and then any video materials sending to North Korea, these are circumvented by this Moon Jae-in administration. So how they work is that this is no-tell, and then you insert the USB, and then you can watch the development of South Korea and then the international world's news, and you can insert CDs or DVDs, and then you can watch information and other video materials. And so there is this the outlet you can connect this. You can insert something in it, and then you can also watch a Chinese broadcast. And 2.3 million, 23 million, I'm sorry. And then since 1940, and then we started receiving outside information from China. And then, but then once it, in since 2000 something, a lot more information flowed in from China, and then the most famous TV drama, the Korean drama, is like the heavens, the staircase to heaven, and then if anybody who North Korean people, asked to speak about their experience watching Korean drama or TV, that drama will be mentioned. I'm pretty sure, and then. And then, since this materials was brought in from China to North Korea, then Kim regime organized this some force to prevent and then search people and then find about the ways these materials are flowing into North Korea. So basically, this is a special force to arrest people who are bringing these materials and things like that. But for the past 50 years, the North Korean government was just trying to brainwash us, saying that South Korean people are just the minions of the US government, and then South Korea is full of beggars and panhandlers on the street. They're so poor, dirty streets, and they don't have any place to live. But then after we watched this drama and then other outside information, and then we realized for sure that this was all falsehood, and we've been lied to for the past 50 years. So we, collected our pennies and dimes and nickels, and like we purchased these no-tell and other devices, and then we started sending these devices, and then we heard this testimony from North Korea, and then when there was a World Cup, the soccer tournament was available, they actually watched that tournament using these devices that we sent. So, and in North Korea, if you want to own a radio, you have to report and register with the North Korean government. And then the radio, the channel will be fixed on one point so that they can only listen to government broadcast. But most recently, and then a lot of people started owning the cell phone looking like this. So we kind of implement the outside information and drama and other things. And then you can listen to songs, and then you can insert ear sets into this, and then you can watch using these small devices as well. And then I received these news from North Korea, and then the Freedom of Asia broadcast, and then they listen to other broadcasts. And then the most interesting program was that a North Korean military 24 hours, roughly translated, that was the most interesting program for us because it was about North Korean people. And then also the KBS, the Korean People's broadcast, and then the Far East broadcast. But but this particular program is about North Korean people itself who defected to other places. They testify and then they speak of their own experiences. I think it's very powerful. It's even more powerful to North Korea who are still in North Korea. But ever since Moon Jae-in administration, this was suppressed, and then we're under basically oppression, and then we're our activities of sending these devices, the government, they don't let us do it, and then for example, Mr. Park Sang-hak's leaflet activities and movement, they just and then and then, as you probably heard, Mr. Park Sung-ho and Park Sang-hak, they are missing. We don't know where they are. And I think they went off the grid intentionally because they realized that. But if that's the case, we wouldn't worry too much. But what if they were actually arrested secretly, and we don't know about whatever happened? So I am also worried that they might be arrested. And then if that's the case, and there are many people in North Korea, North Korean defectors, and then who support our cause and movement, they will fight to death, to freedom. So this is the most the wrongest thing that is done by the South Korean administration is blocking our activities to help North Korean so that they can have more information, sending them information. And they are targeting these stakeholders who are working in these various organizations for Northern Korean people in this type of movement. But then, even if we have to die, we have to give our lives up. We would not. We would not stop our activities to help North Korean people because we have to help them, the North Korean people, because they are under suppression of this closed up country under dictatorship. We have to help them. We cannot stop. So currently, for example, Suzanne Scholte and other stakeholders of that, we rely on you. We rely on your help. So thank you for your attention. I'll just, stop right here.
Sure, that was very interesting. I learned a lot. I wanted to clarify, or I received a message to clarify something that I apparently misspoke before. The Moon Jae-in government cannot stop Free North Korea Radio as it's supported by Americans and Korean Americans, and its transmission is not done from South Korea. I believe I may have misspoke. We have questions that I'll bring in here, and I'll sort of throw them open to any of the panelists, and we may have lost Mr. Jong. As I started to ask before, and we can get a sense of the effectiveness of these messages um, by the escapees that come out of North Korea and come to South Korea and can tell us how many messages they saw. But how do we get a sense of how effective the messaging is to those people who are still in North Korea? When someone escapes, do we hear that many of their friends have heard these messages, or is everyone so fearful of the security services that they don't tell their friends, they don't tell their neighbors that they've heard these messages? So, how do we know how widespread the messaging is getting to North Koreans?
I will speak. This is Mr. Choi. So, if you like to know how widespread, this information is or available to North Korea, and then you said like, what if the people who are in contact with this type of information is afraid of delivering this information to their neighbors or friends? That was the question, correct? But right now, it's very different. Even Pyongyang and so this is official. This from current South Korean government because they already talked to North Korean government, and it's a mutual thing. And then the sister of Kim Jong Un. But then the Kim Yo-jong actually destroyed the broadcast tower that was located in North Korea, and then that actually shows how widespread these type of informations are available to North Korea. So because how they react to it, so we can just tell the information and other things. And then Kaesong province and Hamhung province, and then through the Chinese, and then Tumen River and Yalu rivers, and then through the border line. And Notel and radios and the foreign devices and then other contents are very much widespread. I don't have the exact number, but then I know for a fact that it's even more active from now. But then, more importantly, although there is ongoing suppression and these circumvention from both administration, we should not worry about that. And then because I know that North Korean people have this will to listen, will to know, will to learn about outside of North Korea, and then they want to know. So I think the inner part of North Korea, and then South Pyongyang province and other things, actually it was deeply widely spread. And then there are these merchants and dealers who deliver these devices and information, even to people who live far from the China-North Korea borders. So, and then we did interviews uh, with the most recently defected North Korean people. And then, according to the interviews and information, and the collective information that we learned from that interviews, and then the North Korea people, and then they know it's widespread, and then through the medias and other informations of foreign devices, so their loyalty doesn't lie with Kim's regime and its family anymore because they think different. So so again, I don't know the exact number, how many people actually were exposed or have been exposed to this type of, but more than before, and then it's gonna wild spread from now on even more. And may I say something too? 예, 하세요. So there is this information stat and then it was according to the BBG, and then this sound of the U.S. So they did some survey. I know that I have not much time, but then according to the survey, and then 85% of North Korean people are actually listening to this radio. So this survey was conducted among 20 North Korean defectors also in 2008, and then we did some survey with 200 North Korean defectors. And there was this foreign agency who conducted this survey, and then they conducted among 200 North Korean defectors. 73 people have listened to. And then another survey shows that out of 280 something people, and probably you have to think that they escaped because they listened to the radio and some sort of information. And also there was another research or survey conducted from Ewha Women's University, and then out of 200, 173 people were exposed to K-drama. It's a big number. And then in 2012, there was another survey with 200 people, and then it's like a various NGO and other organization was participating, and then 165 people were exposed. Also a big number. And also in Japanese government conducted a similar survey, and then they conducted a survey towards defectors who defected since 2016. And also here, and over 70% of people were exposed to this drama or information or sort of. And then this shows that a lot of people, a majority of North Korean people are exposed, and then they're thirsty for this type of information. And if it's not for radio or video materials, just a single leaflet. And once they are exposed to this type of information, the shock they feel and then the impact on them is beyond our imagination. And then USB, and I think the Chung Ho Choi did not mention it. And then there is this SD very tiny chip, but then the Korean wave, K-pop, and then it can hold almost 800 different songs in that small things. And then the North Korean government is aware of this. And then so there is a little slot in the device. You can put this the SD card, and then they actually manufacture the device without that port so that the SD card wouldn't be inserted. But so this is like a double blocking from both ends, because we want to send them information in water balloon, but then that is blocked by the Korean government. And the SD card, even if we said it, but we have to just think of the way to help them. We have to think of and find out the complex, comprehensive ways to help them, to deliver the message to them. And this actually has to be done from the Korean government, don't you think? But then they declare they're not going to do it, and then they're even going to prevent us to do that. That's why we're more active, and then we're looking for a way to help them. and then so help us so that we see more results, and then we can keep marching this road and then continue our journey.
Unfortunately, we have a hard stop at 7 p.m. Eastern time because of the next event with the Isabella Foundation. So we unfortunately couldn't get to other questions. And thank you all in the audience for bearing with us through our technical issues, as well as our two lost panelists. I was struck by how widespread the message is getting in North Korea. That is very encouraging, given the difficulties that the escapees face in getting the message to North Korea. It's encouraging to know it's working and it's not just shouting into the wind. It's also interesting to see that some of the most effective messaging is from the soap operas or just the soft messages, as opposed to very strong anti-regime messages. And I think we've heard that from other escapees. It's unfortunate that given the courage and the bravery that the escapees have faced against, trying to work against the North Korean regime and its efforts to stifle free speech, that now they're also facing efforts in South Korea to stifle free speech. And it seems to be part of a growing trend of progressive authoritarianism. So as we conclude tonight's event here at the Heritage Foundation, I'm very grateful to our colleagues formerly from North Korea, as well as Suzanne Scholte and the other organizers for this event. We welcome the opportunity to light a candle against the darkness of North Korean human rights violations. And we encourage everyone to remain observant of what's happening in North Korea and do what we can to try to bring about a resolution. It's unfortunate people have had to work so many years against North Korean human rights violations because the situation has not improved. So with that, I thank all of our panelists and others behind the scenes who were involved, and we are now concluded. 감사합니다.
Thank you. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.